Welcome to part 6 of our Everlasting Gospel series. So far in our journey, we've really come to understand the great spiritual battlefield. Now, we have to talk about how we are transformed to fight in this battle. And here's the key. It's not by our own power. It's by a divine power that literally changes us from the inside out.
So in this study, we're going to dive into one of the most profound and, honestly, one of the most misunderstood truths about our Creator and our final destiny. We're going to tackle a question that's at the very heart of the gospel. How can a sinful person ever be made ready to live in the presence of a perfectly holy God?
To get a handle on this, we really have to start with a foundational truth. The very nature of God himself is a glory so magnificent, so incredibly pure, that the Bible consistently describes it as a consuming fire, a tempest of holiness and light. Now, let's be clear, this isn't a metaphor for God being angry. It's a description of his absolute perfect character. We're going to walk through this together, step by step. First, we'll establish what this consuming fire really is. Then we'll look at the wall of sin that creates this huge separation. After that, we'll unmask a twisted truth, a great deception about this fire. And then we'll turn to the divine solution, the atoning blood. And finally, we'll get to the glorious reality of being made fireproof. Okay, let's begin. Our first step is to really get our minds around this foundational idea, the unchangeable, holy, and fiery nature of God. This is the starting point for absolutely everything else we're going to talk about. The book of Hebrews just puts it out there, plain and simple. For our God is a consuming fire. This isn't a picture of a vengeful God. It's a statement about his very essence. Absolute purity, holiness, and life are who he is. And that pure nature, well, it just can't coexist with its direct opposite, sin.
Just think back to when divinity was revealed to mortal eyes at Mount Sinai. What did the people actually see? They saw a devouring fire. It was this stunning visual representation of a spiritual reality. This is an awesome power that impurity and corruption just can't withstand. Sin gets consumed in its presence, not because God is angry, but because it's a spiritual law, It's like how darkness simply cannot exist in the presence of light.
And this brings us to the central challenge for every single human being, a question posed by the prophet Isaiah. Who among us shall dwell with the devouring fire? How can the imperfect, the sinful, possibly stand in the presence of perfect holiness? How can we ever hope to live with these everlasting burnings, the eternal glory of God? This is the very problem that the gospel was sent to solve. So, if God's presence is supposed to be our home, what's keeping us from him? Well, this separation was never his design. An intruder, an alien principle, it entered our world, and it built a barrier between humanity and our Creator. And let's be absolutely crystal clear on this point. God's original heartfelt desire has always been for humanity to be with him. Christ himself said it. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Fellowship, closeness, living together. This was, and it still is, the divine ideal. And here it is. Here's the cause of the separation. It's sin. Sin is the wall. It's an anti-God principle, a force of rebellion that just cannot exist in his holy presence. This isn't some arbitrary punishment he came up with. It's a fundamental incompatibility. Sin creates a separation that is so total, it actually hides his face from us. Right here, we see the great conflict laid bare. On one side, you have God's intent. He wants to dwell with us, to have intimate fellowship, to share his kingdom. And on the other side, you have sin's devastating effect, total separation, a hidden face, and a fatal barrier that we absolutely cannot cross on our own. This is the fundamental problem of our existence. This brings us to a really solemn reality. The earth has an inevitable appointment with God, and when he is finally and fully revealed, his presence will burn as an oven. But I want you to notice carefully what gets consumed: the proud and all that do wickedly. It's the sin that's attached to people that becomes the stubble. The fire consumes the defilement, the very thing that separates us from him in the first place. Okay, now we come to a critical part of our study. This profound truth about God's consuming, purifying fire has been masterfully twisted by the enemy of God into one of history's most terrifying lies. A lie that was designed to make us fear our Creator instead of running to him for salvation. So we have to ask the question directly. If God is love, what is the ultimate purpose of this devouring fire, of these everlasting burnings? Is it really a tool for inflicting endless conscious pain on people who rejected him? Or is there a different, more profound truth that has been hidden from us? Here it is. This is the great deception. Satan's lie was to take the glorious truth of our destiny and twist it into our greatest dread. The lie says you'll burn forever in hell as punishment, that God is a torturer. But God's truth is the absolute opposite. We were created to burn forever in his presence, with joy. He is a refiner, not a torturer. His fiery presence isn't for eternal pain, it's for eternal purity and life. The enemy took our magnificent destiny and turned it into our deepest fear. So, faced with this seemingly impossible problem, a holy God on one side, a sinful humanity on the other, and a giant wall of separation in between, God himself initiated the ultimate solution, a divine counter-operation that we can call Operation FIREPROOF. This is the genius of the plan of salvation. You see, God's goal was never to destroy us. His goal was and is to destroy the one thing that separates us from him, our sin. He desires to separate the sinner from the sin, to destroy the disease but save the patient. The divine logic of this plan is just perfect. Step 1, sin creates that fatal separation. Step 2, an atonement, a covering, is required to bridge that infinite gap between the holy and the unholy. And step 3, the only thing powerful enough to cleanse us is the precious blood of a perfect, spotless sacrifice. Our redemption wasn't purchased with anything that decays, like silver or gold. No, it was bought with something infinitely more valuable, the precious blood of Christ. He was the perfect lamb, without blemish and without spot, whose life, represented by his blood, was given to pay the debt of sin and to break its power over us. And you know what? This work continues even now. Christ, as our great high priest, didn't just die on the cross. He resurrected and he ascended to the heavenly sanctuary. And there he ministers for us, applying the merits of his atoning blood to our lives, purging our consciences, and fitting us for an eternity with him. This is the ongoing process of removing sin from us. In this atoning work, both what's happening in heaven and what's happening in our hearts, it achieves the impossible. It takes a sinful, fallen human being and makes him capable of dwelling in the very presence of a holy God. In other words, it makes us fireproof. As Ellen White wrote so beautifully, we see a perfect picture of this in the story of Moses. The bush burned with the fire of God's presence, but it wasn't consumed. And she says, "Thus will it be with the human agent who trusts Christ." Those of us who put our trust in him will one day dwell within that very same consuming fire, transformed by it, but not destroyed by it. We'll be engulfed in his love and light forever. This is the end game. This is the ultimate fulfillment of God's original plan. The book of Revelation gives us this amazing picture. The tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them. No more separation, no more veil, no more sin to hide his face. Just God and his people, together, forever. But how? How could God himself become the sacrifice? How could the divine lawgiver become the lamb that was slain? That's the next incredible piece of this story. So I invite you to join us for part 7 as our journey continues into the mystery and majesty of the incarnation of the Son of God, God's eternal pledge of love to every one of us.